Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the British Boxing Blog podcast.
First one of 2019.
Yes,
welcome back.
Happy New Year to anyone that's out there listening.
To one and all. Emphasis on the one person who's listening.
First face-to-face one in a good few months. Got a bit
Since
of
at least 2018. Probably about this time last year.
gloves that off format going on here.
This is very intimate.
Sitting opposite each other at a dining room table.
The lights are low.
But it's good to not rely on phone lines and stuff. But here we are. So yes, welcome.
We've had a good bit chat before we've started recording.
As we do.
Yeah, just to sort of recap, basically, see what we're going to talk about. We've got a couple of questions to respond to.
Will be about an hour because Andrew's got to pick an Indians up at 12:08.
I'm on a tight schedule.
Professional as ever. But no, it's good to be back and get planning for the year and just seeing what's coming up and stuff. So here we are.
Shout out to Sajis and Felon.
Sajis and sponsored by.
I'll have a word when I'm down to you on it.
I'll go with you, sponsor Sajis and Felon.
There's a free meat samosa for a shout out.
But if anyone is in Gateshead, it's actually very good in you.
Yeah.
It's a bit of partage there. But anyway, it is. Yes, so
we'll have a look at some of the stuff going on in the early part of this year. Should we start with a little bit of a recap of last year? Obviously, there's a lot of boxing going on, but there's probably a lot of boxing going on since our last podcast as well. So, anything stood out? Anything caught your eye? Putting them right on the spot here. I'll start.
Yeah, you start.
Begrudgingly, give a bit of respect and credit to Josh Warrington.
He says begrudgingly because he loves Phantom.
Yeah, nothing against Josh. He deserved it. He thoroughly outboxed him, and it was an upset. And I think I replied to someone recently saying it's the second time in 2 fights Warrington's sort of upset the apple cart and beat the odds and beat my personal gambling preferences. But I won't hold that against him. He's cemented himself at the top of the featherweight division, isn't he, really?
I think we discussed this maybe immediately after the day, just in private, and I said to you, I was like, at what point do you now, is the credit there for Josh? Has he picked Selby, because Selby and Frampton on his CV looks incredible and name-wise, has he picked him at the right time, or is he generally a really friggin' good fighter?
I think a bit of both. I think if he wasn't good, he just struggled to make that step up from British to European level first of all, and he did that obviously quite a while ago now, and he's been knocking on that door wanting his opportunity. It's not his fault that he's got it when Selby's apparently tight at the weight and he's moving up and whatever, and obviously he's got the Frampton fight on pay-per-view when Frampton's maybe coming towards the end of his career. What are you gesturing at there?
Nothing. Do you think the credit's not there because of the narrative that sort of dogged him through his career, that he's a ticket seller, he's popular in Leeds, he's like Ricky Hatton with tickets? But was that all that ever people thought it was with Josh? Maybe that comes from his matchroom days of, he's popular in Leeds, and he's going to fight Ellen Road, and which he did.
That's the thing he has done though.
Or was it because he didn't knock anyone out and he's got quite a lot of points victories on his
record? That's what I was going to get at. I think he's always had a good engine on him. He's worked hard. He's carried that on, and basically it's I don't know, it sounds a bit critical just to say that he's outworked Selby and outworked Frampton, but because he did outbox them for bits. But you've got to give him that as his bare minimum. That's what he does. He's based a lot of his boxing and his style off that, and that's hard to do when you don't have that power. I know he wears winning gloves, which are sort of notorious for padding and rumours of bad hands and things like that, and it's a bit of a, I don't know, it's just one of those.
Do you think you caught Frampton at a good time? Is it?
I'm 100%. Of course, it took me about 3 days to speak to you about it.
Is it?
In the aftermath.
Is it Frampton on the downward? Is this the end of Frampton?
I think so, and I think from our point of view, you look at Frampton, who's roughly around our age. George Groves is the same. De Gale's obviously someone we're going to look at who's got a fight coming up, and it's almost like the end of the generation. Amir Khan's obviously again similar age, in his early 30s, at that point where the boxers who we've been watching for the last 10 years or so have come through and are now getting to that point where they are all getting to the end. And I know it's something we've mentioned previously.
We have mentioned previously when you look at names like, George Groves, James DeGale, all Amir Khan,
Three I've mentioned,
mentioned
yeah.
them all, sorry.
Kel Brook, yeah, you got one.
Belly, who's just bowed out.
Belly, of course, yeah.
I call them the crossover days between Matchroom and Frank Warren. They were all sort of, they were all with Frank Warren for a bit. Those guys, then came across to Matchroom, and it is an end of an era for those guys, and the new breeds coming through, and maybe it's hard to accept when you've grown up with those. Do you know what I mean?
Like,
we went to Frampton Quig, and we were absolutely loved it.
Joking aside, I'm obviously a big fan of Frampton, and it's hard to see your favourite boxers. Same with Groves, actually. They're two of mine that I've followed throughout their careers, and it's hard to see them maybe not producing what they once could or the once did. And then on the flip side, you do have to then say, well, yes, it might be a timing thing. Warrington's caught Frampton at a good time. Callum Smith's caught Groves at a good time. But that is how the sport evolves. That's how boxing works.
Well, that is very true.
Like Amir Khan, some of his signature wins, you can argue that he caught, like Zab Judah, for example, at a good time. For Barrera, like well past his best and past his prime weight and all those sorts of things. And it's why you can look at names on a record and you give Warrington credit for Selby and Frampton, and you can pick holes in anyone's record and say, oh, he's beat him when he was slightly past his best, or he wasn't at his prime weight, or he wasn't at this one, he was injured, and there's all these things you can pick holes in. But at the end of the day, like when a boxer does retire and they look back on their career, they're going to look back on that record, and Warrington's going to be able to look back on two massive British, like world level British domestic wins, and
especially one being at Ellen Road as well, which you don't need to go into. Everyone knows he loves Leeds and whatever. But do you think what next then for him? Who would you like to see Warrington fight next? What would you like to see him? Would you like to see him go stateside and maybe get out of this sort of bubble of?
I would. I would say it was double standards if I was to say anything other than he needs to go and fight another champion, because I've said that about loads of world champions in the past. I want to see them unify, and
that's right.
There's no point defending against soft touches or what have you. But with that in mind, I'm going totally against that. And again, I've just said there, I would prefer him going to like Oscar Valdez, for example, as an American one. If you couldn't get that sort of big fight, another good home fight would be Scott Quigg. How entertaining a fight would that be? Like,
because they both fight similar ways.
Yeah, they'll come forward. And
as would the Valdez fight, to be honest with you. That'd be a great fight
to be fair, you're right there.
But as from an old British point of view, then Scott Quigg would... He's sort of the forgotten man in that division, isn't he?
Well, do you know what I mean? He Valdez recently.
He has got beaten.
Coming heavy, and
I know he came back on the...
Be interested to see where his future is, but obviously the other one is Kid Galahad, so the mandatory, isn't
Kid Galahad, yeah, there's been a
could be a one,
isn't it, as well?
There's a bit needle there.
Again, someone that you forget exists. I know he's been in a few matchroom bills lately.
Yeah, I had to really think that.
Kid Galahad was just like, I know he had that ban with, it was shocking what his brother did with his protein shake and stuff, But it was, what can you do? But he's back, and he's never been a fighter that's massively excited me, to be honest with you. He was always at the fringe of that division back in the Frampton and Quick days. He was there making his mouth go, but you never sort of took him.
But again, it's that generational thing. He was almost like half a step or a couple of steps behind where they were. Like you had Quigg with the British and Frampton with the Commonwealth, and they both sort of stepped up. And he was the British and Commonwealth for a bit, and he was European when they were at world level. So you can see it from their point of view why they wouldn't particularly want anything to do with him. And then obviously his absence, as you've touched on.
Going back, going away slightly from the little fellas to the big fellas, again, just from the end of 2018 on the same night. We won't go into the pay-per-view clash, but on the same night there was Dillian Wright versus Derek Chisora 2, and I guess that sort of, it leads us into a couple of questions that we've been given as well, but we'll go into them in a minute. As I say, the heavyweights never seem to be out of the news these days, and again, since that, it's probably because of AJ, who will he fight, who won't he fight, blah, blah, blah. Just going back to that fight, White Chisora 2, how did he see it? What's your thoughts on it now? And what's your thoughts on Dillian Wright?
I think if it had ended like that in the first fight, we wouldn't have seen the rematch. If you were to say to me that off the back of a win over Derek Chisora, how as he is now in terms of his age and record and some of the past performances we've seen, if off the back of that you were then in a position to be challenging for a world title, you'd almost laugh at that. But aside from that one, Dillian Wright's building up a decent body of work. Like it's a good win over Chisora, and he's put to doubt a few Critics who might be thinking, well, what was, what
Well, like,
is he better than
yeah,
Chisora?
I
Because obviously
agree.
struggled with him in the first one. It was a close fight.
like you say, he has had some good wins on
Put
his.
that one to
He
bed.
has got some good wins on his record of Joseph Parker, Chisora twice.
But this is, I don't
Lucas
necessarily
Brown.
know how good a win
I know.
Chisora is.
No,
Like
well,
a
I
lot
know.
of the other,
Seems long.
anyone who's
Yeah.
sort of European level
Mm.
probably beats Chisora.
Yeah.
And he's had a couple of game performances like against
No,
Klitschko and stuff.
And
But
Carlos Takam as well.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that was like his almost last. I don't want to say swan song because he's going to continue, isn't he? But like.
And I guess the frustration, and I'm speaking for you, I really hearing a lot of other people as well, and myself included, that the frustration comes from the fact that the cynics around people, sometimes like us, definitely like you, sometimes like me, think that AJ, Anthony Joshua, and Dillian White has sort of been that matchroom narrative and matchroom idea since the minute they last fought.
Like, again,
and you just think
we've mentioned this, and
they've
100%.
both geared up for AJ White too, and White's passed whatever tests, inverted commas, or whatever you want to call them, that have came his way, and he's still there, and that is music to Eddie Hearn's ears, because that if he's not going to fight Wilder, which he's probably not going to in April, let's be honest, then it's White, isn't it? It has to,
It is, but then
that annoys people because you
I'm
want
probably
the
going
best to
to
fight.
surprise you, but I've like slightly softened to that. And
Right.
if you look at it from the Dillian White point of view, you've just said it there. He's passed the test. He's done since losing to Joshua the first time. He's done everything that's expected of him. He's got himself into a position where he's beat Parker, who obviously AJ has beat.
Yeah.
He's
Lucas Brown.
But this is the thing, at the time,
At the time, good fight.
You think,
Lucas Brown's right hand,
former
and
world
Bob.
champion, all the rest of
it.
it wasn't White's fault that Brown turned up in the state that he did.
No, exactly.
And
You're right.
He's in entertaining fights. He's building himself as he's building that profile, and he's getting to that point where, who does he have to fight other than the world champions? Because it's heavyweight, obviously we've only got the two world champions. It's either Wilder, who's not entertaining the idea of fighting White, and I agree, again, from a Wilder point of view, I understand that.
Do you class
it's all these
Fury,
heavyweights in slightly different directions.
I know Fury's not a world champion as such, he's the lineal champion, whatever. Do you class him as that sort of the third in that trio of world-class heavyweights?
Yeah, for me, it's obviously not in any particular order. You've got Fury, Wilder, and Joshua. He's
definitely put it in order.
Nah, I'd have Joshua above Wilder.
I know.
But it's that triangle theory, isn't it? Like you've seen Fury fight Wilder. Fury, in theory, could easily outbox Joshua. Joshua could clip Fury just as Wilder did. Wilder, obviously we've seen him against Fury being outboxed for most parts, but still having that power and that one punch to claw it back almost.
Did he give us £8 million at the homeless yet or not? No, do we know?
I've got no idea.
Definitely hasn't. So no, I totally agree. He looks good as well.
And then Wilder Joshua you can make an argument for either one in there. So this is the frustration thing. I can sit there and I can theorise and hypothesise and try and work out who's going to beat who and how. But until you see them in the ring, that's all it is. It's like,
do you think the matchroom
hypothetical
guys and fans and employees, whatever, Eddie Hearn, maybe he's got a bit of a shock recently?
I hope so.
A couple of factors that the last Wembley fight didn't completely sell out, and there was a few boos, for Joshua rating, and the sort of Fury Wilder, alright, whatever, didn't do amazing pay-per-view buys, whatever. But you can't not deny that everyone was talking about that fight afterwards, and the week afterwards, it caught a lot of people's attention, and it's sort of like, oh, we haven't actually got this party all to ourselves here, and maybe that we can't. I
hope so, because that has been the case, hasn't it? Like it's basically Anthony Joshua versus TBA. Would have sold out Wembley.
Yeah, but now people are becoming a bit wise to it.
I think it's a British thing, isn't it? Like when you see someone so successful,
you want to knock them down a bit.
Yeah, and people
like Andy Murray today. People can't wait to do him down. So you only won Wimbledon twice.
But once he's retired, it'll be like, oh, he's great. And looking back on it, and it'll be the same with Joshua, no doubt. Like,
just want to quickly go back to Dillian White. Sorry, just getting off track.
I was going to say,
a rumour that sort of came out of left field completely today was that in some newspapers that he was could be gearing up to face Vladimir Klitschko at Wembley in April, which has totally caught me off guard.
Pay-per-view date, isn't it?
The cynic in me noticed that he was in the studio with Jim White today on TalkSport, and it was being discussed, and you think, oh, is that the start of this already? You know what I mean? Are we starting the sort of hype for this already? And that leads us into a question we've got here on Twitter from At Daniel TB Curry, Daniel Curry, how likely do you see a White versus Vlad fight, and what do you think the outcome would be?
I think it's not one I'd ever considered. I thought
Why,
of
from Vlad's point of view?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Vlad's retired. It's like
he's got money.
You'd think so. You'd hope so.
Why Dillian White, and why?
Is it one more chance? Is it that urge we spoke about before when boxers retiring?
Would he not just come back for Joshua? Like, that was the one that last beat him. Why would you? Do you think?
Is it just like that urge wanting to box again?
Maybe so.
You know, he's missing it. Maybe I can't obviously clarify that, but if he is coming back,
it's a strange rule, won't it?
It makes sense to sort of like.
From his point of view, would it be White, and if he beats White, then
for Dillian White, again, you can look at it either side. From Dillian White, it's a good name to have in his record, just as we were talking about there. But if he stops him, it's like, well, lad was nowhere near what he was. Like,
that's it.
It's not really a noble win. Is it a good payday? I assume. But
I guess so.
Then does that raise question marks about that whole Wembley date? And obviously that was essentially Joshua's date, but now is it that they can't get the opponent for Joshua? Is there maybe been a bit of negative reaction to a possible Joshua White rematch?
Do you send Joshua to the US to fight Miller?
That I think Miller's obviously
again,
on that radar as well.
Yeah, Dillian White, I guess that he's always there in the background. It's an easy one for them to make. Do you know what I mean? And it's like randomly AJ started being at his press conference, pushing and shoving and shouting, and you're like, come on, man.
Well, this is the frustrating thing, just going back to again and again and again. It's like Joshua does have other options, and they're not as lucrative or they're not as popular as from our point of view as we'd like, but you can easily see Joshua fighting White, fighting Miller. Yeah. So there was like, if Chisora had beaten White, there was that sort of talk. If Klitschko does come back, is that is he going to get? Could that be a Joshua
a lot of
fight?
Names out there for Joshua, you know what I mean? I'm sure the Usyk fight will probably happen one day as well, and I think the Fury fight probably seems further away than ever at the minute. And I can't see that happening at any point soon.
He's on his tour, isn't he?
He's on his tour, right? And South Shields, February the 7th.
Hartlepool, Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's it.
I've dropped it into Jess, and we'll see what happens.
It's actually Valentine's Day. Just staying on the big fellas, I'll ask you this question, right? And you can answer it in as much detail as you want now, or I know you got to get an Indians, but you could write an article on this one. It's from our friend and British boxing blog contributor at Scott Norman at Scott BNC. If Anthony Joshua never fights Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder, what sort of lasting legacy will he leave? Can he be considered a heavyweight great or an outstanding fighter in a rubbish era? Brackets, although getting better recently. Will we ever know how good he actually was if he doesn't fight those two? Or could be.
It's
a bit of a mouthful question. Probably three questions.
It's a cracking question.
It's a really good question, yeah.
Sparked a bit of debate on our Twitter as well. A couple of responses.
Just let them argue away.
See, this is what I mean. I think he's got to fight one of them. But the issue is, if they fight again, or even, like, not necessarily because they've already fought. So they've fought, and for me, Fury won that. So then they've come out with a draw, even though Wilder's still the WBC champion, which obviously offers some sort of incentive and like the belt basically for Joshua to fight him. Has that lost its shine, lost its gloss already? Because it's not necessarily guaranteed to be number 1 and 2 in the division, which it was before Fury fought Wilder.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason I was so adamant and wanted to see that one, because I rate Joshua. It's not that I'm going to slag him off and say he's rubbish. He's up there. He was one possibly. Wilder was 2, or vice versa. They should have been putting all the belts on the line together and fighting against each other.
Surely, if you Anthony Joshua and you watch Wilder Fury, that you would sort of watch that fight and think, well, you could take them both. I know Fury would cause him problems. I get that, but at the same time, he's put down twice by Wilder. So if you're a big fella, you would think, oh, I could put him down and finish him off this time. Do you know what I mean? Fury was seconds away from losing that fight. So
100%.
And Wilder, you surely, I'm sure Anthony Joshua does back himself, and I'm sure. I don't know who the avoidance comes from. Who knows? But
this is it. How many people are going to be negotiating on his behalf? Like, who is actually in charge of that? Is it? And again, this going off on one a bit. This could be the reason for the bit of hoo-ha and debate about the Wembley date and what's actually going to happen. Maybe Joshua is putting his foot down and saying, "I want Wilder."
How good? This is the thing, right? When he fought Charles Martin all that time ago, I always used to say that it was a great gamble from the matchroom lot, and he was the IBF champion, and he won it. And he was sort of, at that time, he was like a work in progress world champion. He was still sort of not a prospect, but you know what I mean.
We talked about. That was timing. It was
great timing.
It was the opportunism, wasn't it?
But now people have sort of, you forget that stage of it now, and now he's legit. You know, he's fought Klitschko and blah blah. He needs those fights now, doesn't he?
This is the issue for. I loathe saying about that. The more knowledgeable boxing fan, and this is what may be infiltrating that casual element a bit as well. Like the normal people who would normally go and pay for a Joshua and go and see him, they're maybe getting a bit wise to it.
That's my point earlier. Yeah,
because 100%. Of how high I rank him and how others rank him, even Joshua against a top 10 opponent, likes of obviously Pulev was Muta, he fought Takam. I know Parker was a world champion at the time, but. Like those sorts of fights,
do you think
they're not what he needs? They're not going to define his legacy, as like Norm was saying there. They're not ones you're going to look back on and say, oh well, he beat Takam over 10 rounds or 11 rounds, or he beat, like, for example, Brazil, those sorts of wins that he fought earlier on.
Yeah.
And then some of those names are still around and still there.
Brazil's still kicking about. He's always in a friggin' mandatory slot.
But like, he beat White at British level, so if he knocks him out again, it's like, is that going to do anything to enhance his legacy?
Do you think
enhance his bank balance, but not necessarily.
Do you think the performances post Klitschko, you mentioned them there, the Takam performances, I'm sure they were both post Takam and Parker, they weren't great. They don't stick in your memory. Like, I could tell you the Klitschko fight, I was in Prague, it was amazing, that uppercut, blah blah. Like, I knew where I watched it, exactly where I watched it. Takam and Parker, I'm like, was that the same fight? Like, nothing much.
I honestly tell you now, I haven't seen the Takam fight. I didn't watch it.
Was it the spectacle, do you think, recently as well? That's like, oh, actually, he's not just knocking everyone out straight away now. Do you think it's become boring?
That's what's going to happen when he steps up in level. Obviously, he's against better fighters. And, like, the Parker fight, I can see, I watched that at my mate's house, and there was a bunch of us round, and they'd paid for it on pay-per-view, and like loads were getting a mixture of different knowledge levels for boxing. And they were all, it was basically picking which round it was AJ was going to end it in, and then it sort of went the distance. And for them it was essentially quite boring, because it was, well, that's not what
a casual
Joshua was built on. That's not what the whole Anthony Joshua was about.
No, it wasn't. No, you're right, totally. And I think it's hard to just sum up his question, but to answer it, basically he has to fight those two, because if not, he was. I think he's right. He was a good champion. He was a decent champion in a not great era. If he doesn't fight those two, if he fights those two and beats those two, then
the only other way of sort of spinning it is if Joshua continues to beat everybody else, and then that everybody else goes on and proves that afterwards they go on and do well, and then that'll obviously look better on Joshua. Like the Mayweather Canelo, for example, the better Canelo does, the better that win looks for Mayweather.
But then to be great in your era, surely you have to fight the best about at that time. It's not Joshua's fault that the rest of the division, but the two you've mentioned, are average to middling. Do you know what I mean? He can only beat who's around it in his time.
But the thing is, if you took...
But if he's not fighting the main two, then...
If you took Joshua, Fury and Wilder out of that division, even just Joshua and Fury, if you kept Wilder in it, the likes of Parker, White... Just pausing for a picture here. Parker, White, you could say Brazil, you could say some of the others we've talked about, Takam, now, but you chuck them in against each other, they could be an entertaining fight, and they'd be pick-em fights. You wouldn't be sure who's going to win. You could make a case for White over all of them. You could make a case for Parker.
Are you advocating that heavyweight super series?
That would be, would be good. But that sort of thing, like, it's when you've got that one or two people who are a level above them, as Wilder and Joshua have sort of proven so far, that then you want to see them fight each other.
That's true.
It makes sense. And the other main issue for heavyweights in terms of defining a legacy, and the same thing Dog Klitschko for years, it's you've got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
If you're the heavyweight champion, you've got to fight all the other heavyweights, and if you beat them all comfortably,
it's true.
Your sort of era is looked down on. The reason why Ali and all that was so popular is because, again, they all got in and fought each other, but they often beat each other as well. They had losses to one another.
Yeah, that's true, and they bounced back from the losses.
Whereas if you look at the lower weight classes, you don't necessarily need to fight all of your challengers, because you can move up in weight and define your legacy that way. Whereas a heavyweight's only got one division to go in.
It's a very good point,
There's only so much they can do. But
No.
fighting the others best is the minimum, I think, from a fan's expectation.
No, 100%. I think he has to be considered that great. He has to fight the best of his time, and that's all he can do.
As I say, there's 3 of them there. Like they should be just
there.
paired off and fighting.
Of course, they should be.
You've got a rematch there. You've got the other 2 to fight Josh.
I know. I put a poll out on Twitter the other day. I think it was something like 42 days or something since December 1st, since Wilder Fury, and it's died down now. It's the fanfare, the dust settled a bit now. Is that still? And it was overwhelming. The answer was yes. Is the appetite still there for Wilder Fury 2? And I think it's always going to be, isn't it? Because it was that.
Oh, 100%.
I was just thinking, because has time gone on and people are starting to forget about it? And
I think it is. Yeah, there's an element of that because they're not at the forefront.
Did they need a strike where they
was all this
straight after the fight? I know it's only a month and a bit gone, but is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting it to happen. I mean, I think I expected it to happen sort of by April of this year. Nothing's really been said, so it might get back a bit further.
I was here in June, the last time.
Yeah, but as I say, that was just when it happened. I thought, oh, give it a few months and get them straight back in again. But
then when you look, Tyson's doing that. I know if it's only a public appearance too, and I'm sure you could cancel. You know what I mean? But February, March.
Yeah, but I mean,
he'd be trading alongside that. I'm sure.
Yeah, I can imagine the appetite there from both of them because they've both got a bit to prove. I think they both enjoy as well having their little moment away from Joshua.
Could be good dance partners, as people like to say about boxers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it obviously
they've stumbled across.
It was a cracking little fight, and what made it good was what you said earlier. Fury outboxed him for most of it, but he was still there to get caught.
It's that contrast, wasn't it?
It was the whole everyone's questions beforehand got answered to a certain extent, but then
they did. But
I think even without it being a draw, I think if Fury had won that on points as I'd scored it, because he'd been knocked down, you'd be going into the rematch exactly the same.
Exactly the same, aye. The betting markets won't be much different because he was 2 seconds away from
Can Fury win on points and outbox him and frustrate him? Or can Wilder catch him and sustain it enough to knock him out? That's the same questions are going to be there again, so the appetite for it should be exactly the same.
He was down twice, do you know what I mean? And for all he was brilliant that night, but again Wilder fancied his chances to put him down.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Both men would go into it confident again, so you can, and if it was done as easily as they made out the first time, then the second time it should be as well.
Good sum up. I enjoy that. Right, next on my list, I've really got a list. Very good question. Thanks, Scott Norman. Right. Do you either want to talk Northeast, or do you want to start fights that have been announced so far this year and anything coming up that catches your eye? Do you want or up to you?
We'll go with the sort of international national mix. And then we can bring that in.
There's something I want to quickly say about, and that's I feel like I'm repeating myself from when boxing was on ITV maybe a couple of years back. But I think it's great, honestly, I do, and it excites us. And ITV4, and I know the Gale Eubanks pay-per-view. You can argue about the merits of that, and we'll probably do that another time. But again, just the regular fights they're putting on. Pacquiao, Broner, and they've just announced Caleb Plant there as well. I think it's this Sunday night as well, going into the early hours of Monday morning against Jose, and I can never say this guy's name.
Uzcategui.
Uzcategui, there we go. Lovely. Class. Obviously, they've got the partnership now with PBC, and I think it's Pox and Sports that was doing it over here again. And I totally forgot about Richard Pox. Remember him? We used to speak to him a few years back.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think it's great, and I'm one of those that I've always said advocate for boxing being on as many channels as you want it to be on. And I think as consumers, you can sort of get bogged down sometimes, and why is this on this channel and blah whatever. But just the more boxing on the telly, the better. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to watch boxing, then you've got your pick. And there hasn't been that many fights announced so far this year, really. But again, you've got fights every weekend now, from now going through till the end of Feb, and then Matchroom are kicking off again. Box Nation have got a couple of fights listed. BT, Frank's making plans. So I think from a boxing television fan, we've never really had so good.
Yeah, we've said that for a long time. Obviously, for us two boxing nerds, like any channel that boxing is on, we will watch it. But
it's kind of the point where I'm actually looking forward to Devon Haney tonight over on the Showbox card. We caught it on Box Nation, watched them on one just for a fix.
But what you want is that competition. It's healthy between the different broadcasters. Like if you've got one broadcaster, just like we talk about boxing, like the heavyweight division. If you've got one out in front, way above the others, it does become a little bit boring, and you want to see them challenge. So if they're going to all push each other, and push each other into producing better content and more of it, then yeah, as you say, boxing fans are winning.
Any that particularly catches your eye?
I think jumping ahead a little bit to sort of further in this month, but it has to be Pacquiao Broner.
ITV4.
Two names, but then as you say, just on terrestrial TV.
It's funny, I've said to you a couple of years, but Pacquiao Broner will be start of January, ITV4. You would have been what you
Well,
told
was
us.
it like $74 or something in America pay per view?
Mental, we're getting it here on ITV4. Class.
Obviously, you've got the time difference to contend with, but
No,
I will be.
I'll be putting a recording. Maybe even get up. Who knows? But Pacquiao is the odds-on favourite of the bookies.
Should be.
Every fight, every build-up, you hear, but it's the new Broner. He's switched on. He's taking it serious.
I'm done.
I'm thinking he ever go 20, 40 quid.
Not a chance. He's too static. His footwork's too slow. He plods around. If like Pacquiao.
Do you think it's funny that Pacquiao at this stage and
Pacquiao goes around him and pick him off
past his best, right?
Yeah.
And I know he beat Matisse last time out. Was it Matisse? Was that last time out?
I think so.
Anyway, but he's still, even at this point where he's miles past his best, we know he is, like, he can still beat these contenders, and you know what I mean? Like, fair play to him, like.
No, but that's it. I think it's sort of going through the motions a bit, isn't it? Like, as you say, he's better than he's better than he had been, I think, and there was a sort of lull in his performances almost around about the Mayweather time, maybe a bit afterwards. And you know, recently he's looked a bit sharper. He's got the stoppage in his last outing, as you said there. And like, again, it's just one of those where talk about styles gelling nicely. I think it will. I think they're both good fighters. I think the best way to beat Broner is to overwhelm him and outwork him and out hustle him. And Pacquiao, provided he's still got even a small percentage of his reflexes and speed, he should have more than enough to at least outpoint Broner. I can't see him completely stopping him. I think Pacquiao unanimous decision. I'll go with that one.
First Matchroom USA call of the year, Andrade Demetrius seems to be staying quite active. It seems 2 minutes ago since he last fought to me. I think it was end of
doesn't it?
Oh, he has been quite. He's missed a lot. I think it was end of October last time out. But against Artur Akapov. Do you know where I've seen Akavov? Do you know where I've seen this guy?
I do indeed.
Paisley Leisure Centre against Billy Joe Saunders. My word.
And for about 2 years, our friends thought you just went up on your own to watch that as a boxing fan.
I did go on my own.
Website.
Did go on my own. I had a lovely premiere in. But yes, and that was that night. It was just a bizarre night. World title fight in Paisley Leisure Centre. But very sort of rusty, out of shape, mediocre Billy Joe Saunders. But he's still in the mix, this guy. And I looked, and I think he's had 3 fights since then, and he has his big chance away in the States. And there's some other names on that card. I think Jorge Linares is on there as well, so it's good to have that back.
It is, and obviously, like, again, I know it's not necessarily for us here, but you've got the DAZN link there, and a lot of question marks were raised when that was announced, and especially where was the money going?
Especially DAZN Italy. That was still can't quite get my head around that.
But like, for someone like Andrade, who's 30-year-old, he's been so inactive, like criminally inactive, and if that's going to get him boxing again and regularly and back in the mix at world level, then again, that can only be a good thing for him.
Just a quick one as well. Well, we might as well talk. DeGale Eubank, the worst kept secret in boxing, was finally announced. Maybe a bit later than people thought. Maybe it was a lot of people said it was going to be January, but here it is. 23rd of Feb, ITV box office. Again, that sort of crossroads fight-ish, our friends have been arguing about this. DeGale will beat him. He'll use the blueprint, and it's like, well, the blueprint that people have shown against Eubank, and it's like, well, actually, will he? Or is Eubank all kinds of wrong for DeGale for the sort of Truax version of DeGale?
I want to know what you think.
I think Eubank's all kinds of wrong for it. Eubank's odds on favourite, and I think he'll do him.
Is he favourite? Is he having looked at the odds?
I think he is. I think DeGale's just over even money, and Eubank's just odds on. I think. I don't know, I just can't get those Truax fights out of my head for DeGale. First one where he lost, and then the second one where he won, but not amazingly well. And I just think, was that the man? Is this a man that is now needs the big money fights to call it a day? Like we mentioned earlier about a lot of fighters now of his era that are looking to cash out and check out on a high, and you just think, were those? You know what? Before those 2 fights, I was a massive DeGale fan. He went over to America for Butte, for Durrell, and he was just class. And when we came back over here and he was on this big screen at the O2 and everyone applauded him, he was like, what, me? And it's like, mint. He sort of went over to America, backed himself, and it was just like, I think people finally, he escaped those sort of Blue Water Channel 5 years. Do you know what I mean? Where
That's a great way of putting it.
it was, and he'd got the fights what his skill set deserved, and he deserved. And people were like, "Oh, De Gale's class," and people finally started to warm to him because nobody ever did. But then I just think, from a boxing point of view, those Truax fights just maybe looked like a man whose body was possibly shutting down on him, and for the time catching up with him, I guess. But again, I'm not saying Eubank's perfect by any means. He's
got his flaws.
He's got his flaws, but I like watching him. He's never in a dull fight, and he's a character, and I enjoy him.
Well, yeah, I'll give my thoughts on that. And to be honest,
Shoot
one
from
of those few.
Shoot from your hip.
Good one.
Your new hip. Partridge.
I got it right.
Continue.
You need to stop saying partridge and just see who picks up on it.
One person.
If that one person does it, yeah, the most hits we got was when you did it at Bellew, when nearly went viral.
Oh yeah, it did actually. It's the best week I've done 4, yeah. Right, continue. Go on, thoughts.
I agree with you. I think Eubank is, in 2019, is going to be too much for him. I think De Gale, anywhere near his prime, would be able to follow that blueprint quite easily, but he's always been wanting to spend too much time on the ropes, and if Eubank gets into range, I think he can struggle to get into range. His footwork's not great, but once he does, and if he does, he'll pin him down for long enough to, I don't know, it depends what De Gale's got left as to whether he stops him late or if it goes the distance, but I think he'll outwork him and land more shots and just be the busier fighter. Basically what you've said there with the Truax fight, like, yeah. And I don't know what it proves, because going back to the pay-per-view thing, it's like that there is a genuine bit of rivalry there. It's not one that's being cooked up. This is like, yeah, it goes back years ago in the spar. They've always had words against each other every so often, and from that point of view, I can see how they can market it, and it will be good, and I'll be watching it definitely. But
yeah, 100%.
In terms of the boxing landscape, it's not particularly like relevant anymore, is it?
There is a clash with a 4-fight dinner show up here in Darlington, so we'll draw straws.
No. Yeah, one of us will split.
No, I'll go with that one if you do the next one. Anyway, we'll discuss that off podcast. But no, I think it's a good fight.
Just going back to what you were saying about De Gale.
Shoot.
Do you think that him going over to America and having all those tough fights has had an impact on him and has sort of resulted in the Truax performances?
Possibly.
Especially the first one.
When you think about fellas like De Gale, like, you know, he's been around a while now, and how long ago does De Gale go? See, like, you know what I mean? That was in a total.
That was nearly 10 years ago.
That was mental, like, and you've got to think of that. He's 28 fights now. So for debut was, you know, as you say, it was 10 years ago, 2009, fighting for 10 years. That's camps, that's fights, that's
and he's in big medals. And you talk 10 years ago now.
Amateur fights as well, and I think it probably is a bit of that. And I know he had a bad. I think it was a shoulder injury or rotator injuries and stuff. And he has had some tough fights. When you think of, you know, especially the Durrell fights and stuff like that, Medina and Barrow Jack as well. As you forget,
but it's hard to think
the Barrow Jack draw 2 fights of Truax.
That's what I mean. The Barrow Jack fight was a hell of a tough fight, and being on the road and putting your body through all that, and you know, he got dropped off Durrell
2 years ago that early. I
dropped off Barrow Jack, smashed his teeth in, and all those sorts of things. And as you said, like muscle, shoulder injuries, whatever. It's going to catch up with you at some point, and again, it could be that case of what we just talked about. The timing
it could be totally
perfect time.
Could be timing. It's like you said before about Frampton, and like Groves looked like an old man in there against Callum Smith, and that, you know what I mean. And maybe Bellew didn't, you know.
No, it's hard,
and it's hard, and it's not nice to see. But
as a
David Hay is another great example.
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean?
But it's more often than not, boxers go on one fight too many because they don't know that they haven't got it until they're in there. It's not like as a footballer. I think we've discussed this sort of likeness before. Like, as a footballer, if you're in training or whatever, and you're sort of feeling it, and you're like, oh, I haven't quite got me touch there, whatever, blah blah blah.
Oh yeah.
You could look alright in camp for a boxer and in sparring and stuff, and it might just be that last little making weight, or it might be literally on the night you struggle.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's a good point. It's like football as well happening. You know, it happens with them too, and it's a shame. It is a shame.
One day you've got it, one day you haven't.
You have that emotional attachment to fighters as we do footballers, and it's not nice to see that catch up with you. But it's a great fair play to Gale. I know it could be financially motivated, whatever, but he's took that fight and you get your answers on the night, I guess. Do you know what I mean? And and from the Eubank point of view as well, he sort of has to bounce back, because if he gets beat off to Gale, that's Saunders, Groves, to Gale, and people are like, oh, every time he steps up, that's the thing.
Well,
that gets thrown at Eubank. Every time he steps up against anyone with a remotely a bit class, he's just a European level fighter. If that's
it's not even necessarily the ability. I think it's the style, because like I said this, see, the last time like he lost to Saunders, and then he did look impressive in that sort of run back up to the Super Series, but everyone he fought, no matter how whatever you think of the names, stylistically they were there to be hit from. They were ones that are going to stand trade. They didn't have to go looking for them. Like Arthur Abraham on his record is a good win.
It's good, very good.
Again, past his best.
Suited him down to the ground, didn't he?
He hasn't got the legs to get out of the way of him. You outwork him, blah, 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 gets his win. And then comes up against someone that can jab and move a bit, and you look like a fish out of water.
Just as we approach maybe the last sort of 15 minutes type of thing. One more fight I guess we could quickly look at. We'll probably do another podcast before then. It's the first sort of UK Matchroom show card that has been announced. And that is the headline by Ted Cheeseman and Sergio Garcia European title fight.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Me too.
Like, there's a couple of decent fights on the undercard, but the main event, this could be our link into the Northeast thing, and you're going to look at me absolutely baffled. Because Cheeseman's stepping up to European level.
Yes.
And
I was just thinking that you've stolen my line.
He's blitzed.
Yes.
It is. He's blitzed.
It completely mirrors Witten.
British level. Yeah. And obviously, Patera was a solid European contender, but no one expected that upset. Yeah. It was just the next step in the Ritson sort of story. And obviously for us, that's definitely the case. But it's similar for Cheeseman, because he's been calling out the likes of Fowler and Garcia, Fitzgerald winner.
Garcia, he's a Masters winner.
Had to put it in.
Anyhow, but no, he's a 28-0 Spaniard, and there's been some good fighters coming out of Spain recently. La Haraga, that has beat Frankie Kaplan, and a guy that you saw, Medina, that beat Martin Ward, I think, over here, and stopped him. And there's some decent talent coming out of that country now.
So that will be a really intriguing step up.
It will be.
Like, went back to the start when we were talking about Warrington making that step up.
Yep.
And like one of our mates was saying this, like saying, oh well, if you're good at British level, you should be sort of stepping up to European and dealing with that quite comfortably. But it doesn't always happen.
Are you surprised they've moved Cheeseman in that direction and not just let him wait for Fowler? And
100%. Very surprising. And again,
get those domestic fights going in that division. Fitzgerald and Fowler and all that.
You think then, is that obviously again it's confidence in Cheeseman, but is it a case of pushing him on and keeping them separate and hoping for a bigger fight further down the line?
Do you hope Cheeseman... Well, if you already heard, you hope this maybe. Do you hope that Cheeseman beats Garcia, say if Fowler wins on March 30th in Liverpool, which maybe you fight Fitzgerald that day, I don't know, and let them clash after that? I don't know.
That's what I mean, and then you've got it for a European title, and you can put that as the main event.
100%, that's...
And, like, again, by definition, a European title is bigger than a British.
It's a good card, and, Matchroom have always been strong in London, and which is no surprise, because where they're based, Essex, whatever. But they've always South. They've always had a good stable down there, and I think some of the best matchroom cards of recent times, right, have been like away from all the big hitters and stuff. Have been those sort of, how do I word it, domestic cards that they've done down like York Hall or a Copper Box or something, and with Cheeseman and those guys on it, like. They've got a strong presence down there now of people like Felix Cash and all those
because
the names like that,
because they can put them in against each other.
Martin J. Ward.
I think that's like
there's some good fighters down there now.
It's the minimum that the fans expect. And
like that last one they put together with Chamberlain and Watkins, and that was cracking. That it was a midnight of boxing that, and you had some proper 50-50 sort of.
This is it though. This is like why it's so frustrating, because I don't think, and most boxing fans don't think, that it's too much to ask that. When you've got these fighters under the same umbrella, that you put them in against each other, and yes, I can understand why they want to build their records and get the hype behind them and the bandwagon and stuff, but like it's not necessarily that world level thing we were talking about with the heavyweights, and Cheeseman and Fowler's legacies aren't going to be defined by not fighting each other, but it leaves a bit of a sour taste when you've got two lads, they're both game, they both want to get in there with each other. Obviously Cheeseman's like a young. He's really in his early 20s, and it's like stepping into
Yeah, 100%.
stepping up to European level. So he's obviously backing himself and confident.
He reminds you of Ritson in that sort of fearless, like
Come forward style,
come up the sort of from the bottom upwards, and
Yeah.
it's one of those that you've watched him now for a long time, Cheeseman, since he's getting a lot of undercards.
Well, it is one of the
down there.
benefits of like the next gen shows as well.
That's a very good point.
They've had the criticisms, and often rightly so, but
I think
it
Jake
has
Ball,
provided a platform for those to sort of step up.
I think Jake Ball, Craig Richards is a good fight as well on that card. Postponed the first time round. Looks like they're going at it again, bit of needle there as well. So that's another, as you say, two lads who are just willing to go for it.
This is the thing: if that turns out to be an absolute dud and it falls flat, then
What have you lost?
so be it.
Yeah.
Like you can't
Yeah.
criticise Matchroom, and well, you can, but not for that.
You definitely can.
But like not for that. If they put them in like a Coley and Chamberlain, it was an absolute horrible fight to watch. But
it was, but at the
he's
time,
matched them at the time.
At the time, we were British beef and all that.
Yeah,
Everyone's
exactly.
buzzing for it. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
some fights do fall flat, I guess. So that's we'll obviously squeeze another one in close at the time, and I think Matchroom, staying on the Matchroom path, that there seems to be a couple of shows that again haven't been officially announced yet, but basically are, and that we'll do it in date order, I think, and that's up here again, which sort of took me by surprise earlier this week, up in Newcastle, March the 23rd. Return of Lewis Ritson, which, to be honest, I didn't see, and speaking to Lewis and speaking to people connected with boxing up here, was saying probably not. He'll probably not fight up here, after the Patera
get him
fight.
on the road.
Get him on the
out of
road.
the
Maybe he'll
spotlight a bit.
Maybe he'll have a tune up and sort of then go back for the European. But it looks like they've agreed to the board's demands, and that was to face him against his British title mandatory, Andy Townend. So, great for us, mind.
Richard Keys to fight the winner.
Richard Keys, Andy Gray, Andy Townsend, yes, made a comeback.
Ritson's had words with Richard Keys, hasn't he?
He's getting Andy.
Beef in the past.
Hairy-handed plum. Anyway.
Style-wise, that should be another good clash. Like they both come forward, both can bang.
I think a lot of people look at Townend's record, see 4 defeats, but maybe that doesn't tell his own story. He's got that, and we were discussing it before we came on that he's got that sort of record of a fringe British level English. He's beat some guys that we know, and he's knocked a few people out, and again, he's a strong lad and
decent experience, and
Lewis fighting the way Lewis fights could be a bit of a war for how long that lasts.
It's obviously stepped down from the European level where he's at, but he lost at that level, so he just need to come back. And
I saw when I put the tweet out on Twitter the other day, there was a bit of criticism out there. Oh, what's he fighting? Why is he taking the step back? And it's like, well, because he got beat.
To. I can't
you know what I mean?
demand to go back in again.
I'm surprised he's kept his British, and it sort of echoed. I remember. It's quite ironic actually, because it echoed what Callum Johnson said to us about Joe Gallagher saying keep your British title because if you've got a belt you'll always have work.
Yeah.
It's got him vacated this week. So it makes
it's nice to see someone following your advice, Joe.
Maybe it makes me point totally redundant, I don't know. But he's but from our point of view, it's great to see him back, and it's great to have a week where we can get stuck into up here as well. Do you know what I mean? Everything's on the doorstep.
Yeah,
Press
definitely.
conferences, weigh-ins, the lot.
Just as sort of to recap then, in addition to that one, I know you said there's another Matchroom show which we'll talk about in a little bit, but
yeah,
obviously there's some more action up here as well. You mentioned the Darling Dinner Show on the 23rd of Feb, so that'll be one we'll be looking to attend. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, we'll be there.
Over.
I think your Jess is going to that one. We'll send her. We'll watch you bang to Gil.
That sounds like a plan.
But actually, just stay in the northeast. There's a bit of news that sort of maybe again caught people off guard, and maybe it's caught us off guard at the start of the year.
Not Roy Kelly though.
Not Roy Kelly. He was on it. Punchlines gets all the exclusives. Roy Kelly, and that's Tommy Ward, a fighter, a really good fighter actually. That goes under the radar. He's took a fight. He was going down the IBF route, right? But anyway, it seems that something's happened in that route, and he's now going down the WBO route. He's going to Kansas City on February the 15th to fight on the Showtime / Showbox card over there, which I guess they put their prospects on. There's one on Box Nation tonight actually. Anyway, he's fighting Jesse Angel Hernandez, a Mexican fighter with 1 loss on his record. I think Tommy's ranked at 4, he's ranked at 11, and I think basically their thinking is to get Tommy over there and pinch his rankings, you know what I mean, for their fighter who's being backed by a big promoter. Tommy isn't. but obviously Phil Jeffries, Dave Garside, Neil Fannin doing an amazing job with Tommy, and he's a proper talented kid, and he's going the hard way to sort of get noticed. He's going abroad and he's backing himself in America. So February the 15th, not long, and wish Tommy the very best of luck for that.
Yeah, I mean, he's on a hiding to nothing, isn't he? Like, in terms of...
He was the British champion, wasn't he?
Yeah, and like, there's a bit of hoo-ha and debate about that as well.
Jazza Dickens.
Yeah, the rematch with Jazza Dickens, and like, you can understand he's getting into that world level. As you say, he was ranked highly with the IBF.
Yeah.
They've sort of taken this chance.
He's such a good fighter, Tommy. Sometimes you think, is he too good? Like, he doesn't punch the hard. I know he got a nice stoppage win on the wrist.
He's picked up a few recently, actually, which sort of bodes well, I think, because going over there, he's going to have to win in dominant fashion, which technically he is more than capable of. And
he is.
I'm again looking forward to seeing him have that step up.
I hope it gets televised. That's the only thing. I just hope.
Yeah, that's a hope to see it,
Nation
but hope to actually see it. Yeah.
Some sort of stream picks it up. Oh, your dodgy box could come in. I mean, cut that bit out. Your internet streams could come in handy.
My ink pens TV company.
His ink pens. But great. Tommy's going his own way, and good luck to him. Like, not taking the easy way, but fair play to him. And
no, but
he'd be absolutely again, if he wins that, it'd be brilliant.
He's another young boxer, but he's very experienced. He's over 20 fights, and he's at that point where you've got to take that risk at certain levels.
And we've been doing this long enough, and you know how hard it is for fighters without one of the big two British promoters to get world title shots. Do you know what I mean? And he's not signed to Matchroom. Frank Warren flirted with him for a bit, and I think that was let go because he's not a massive ticket seller, and he's so quiet and he's so respectful, and you just forget. Honestly, you forget about him. Like, but
in the nicest possible way.
At this standard now, he's probably the best fighter we've got up here, and he's still unbeaten. He's such a young kid.
I'd go along with that.
He's class, and maybe he's echo those days if he won it. Remember when Jamie McDonald won it without a big, I think it was Dennis Hobson maybe.
Yeah,
got
him. Got him home advantage.
If he won the world, I'm not talking about this fight. I'm just the home thing. But good luck to him, and not long. So hopefully I want to try and get down to see him as well before that, and down Hartlepool as well with Fannin's gym. So it'd be good to go and see him.
Sounds like a plan.
So that was it. Northeast wise, yes, one show, Darlington dinner show, 4 fights. February 23rd. March 16th has been announced the week before Written at Rayton Meadows. That's another Phil Jeffries, Steve Wraith co-promotion. Don't know who's on that yet. Guessing it'll be Tom Hill, Joe Hill, etc.
Yeah, I would imagine it's going to be sort of a chance for the ones who aren't going to be on that Written undercard, but everything's in the early stages.
Asked me the other day, any names announced for Written undercard yet? I'm like, God, do I know? I think it'll be
from a Northeast point of view.
No, it hasn't. No. From a Northeast point of view, I guess it'll be Joe Laws, Asreti, and Lawrence Asreti, and your more
a couple of others, maybe.
Well-known names, Towns Robertson and stuff. But that's it.
Simon Villady come back.
Oh Christ! And I think that's about it from the Northeast so far.
Yeah.
This year, I don't think there's been anything else announced. But
move across to the Northwest then, just to wrap things up.
Yes. We talked about this earlier as well. It's not like we rehearsed this. Liam Smith.
That's slick, this, isn't it?
Liam Smith finally been announced as a Matchroom signing this
weekend. Seems to be like unofficially a Matchroom fighter for ages.
I can't believe this hasn't happened about 4 years ago.
His brothers links, Joe Gallagher. His
brothers, It just 3-fight deal, which it's classic Matchroom tactics, a 3-fight deal and a tune-up fight. I guess we mentioned another Matchroom show. It's another, worst kept secret that looks like there's going to be one in Liverpool on March the 30th, and we're surmising here that'll probably involve Robbie Davis Jr. defend his British title. Liam Smith's going to be on that, his first fight under the Matchroom banner. So Fowler's
and again, like London, they've got a bank of Liverpool-based fighters
and Northwest-based fighters
in that area that they can put on.
100%, I'm sure some of the Manchester lads will be on too. So that's it. And immediately, as soon as you signed the Matchroom, you put 2 and 2 together. Which other 154 fighter of Matchroom got? Kell Brooks, do you know what I mean?
154-ish.
Ish.
Because he decided on a weight class.
Well, that's it. Is that a fight? I don't think.
It's one that was mentioned a while ago, and it was sort of, was it Frank Warren putting the bids across and saying, we want Kell Brook, when they both had like when Kell made the step up and stuff, and you're like, well, what other fights are out there for Brook, and like the Khan fight's not going to happen, and it was pinch of salt because you think, well, any time that Warren and Hearn come out negotiating in public against, not even with each other, against each other,
well, that's it.
It's never going to happen. Whereas again, now they're under the same thing, the same promotional banner. in theory makes it a lot easier to happen unless
It's not a fight that
unless
anyone's.
Jeremy Khan
I don't think Brooks Smith's a fight that anyone's particularly clamoured for over the years. Do you know what I mean?
No,
And
it's not.
like,
But it could be an entertaining
Could be an
fight, but
entertaining
then
fight, aye.
you sort of begrudge just an entertaining fight when there's no world titles on the line.
No,
It'll be
that's-
pay-per-view.
Oh God, will it?
Cal Brook's not fighting on terrestrial against like
Liam Smith.
another name.
No, you're right. And again, fighters, I
I love
don't.
how you're physically sick, repulsed by that.
I don't put again. Kel's another one of those fighters who's coming towards the end and looking for the big fight, and I guess
Big
that's
fight,
the big
singular.
fight, Liam Smith. And that's no disrespect to Liam, and I know Liam sort of he's mentioned on his Instagram as well this week that people are going, oh, would he fight Liam Williams again if he comes, and all this, and he's like, no.
Why?
And he's like, I've been in with Canelo and Mungai, and it's just like I got bit off both, whatever, but I want the money now, and I
It
want
must
the
be
big
hard
names,
not
and
to motivate
Aye.
yourself. Like,
exactly. And I know he got beat off both, but
there's no shame
one
in
of my
that, really, is
favourite brave effort. Classic Steve saying, "It's a brave effort," and they were. And I think he wants the big fights now, and I guess that's the reasoning behind his Matchroom sort of signing. Whether he gets fed again to some American names on those DAZN cards he's shown before he'll travel. So
Canelo rematch.
the one everyone wants to see. But
Canelo's worked his way through Liverpool.
forgot about Rocky Field. But anyway, we're not going to that. So that's it. That was the other major news of the week, I guess. Feels like it's back, slowly back after Christmas. Again, looking down the list here, not a massive amount announced officially yet.
not
Stuff
really.
to take you over into mid-Feb, but I guess in sort of March, as we've just mentioned there. But I think that's when it'll probably start getting busier after that. Then March, April, May.
Well, yeah, we've talked about that.
Date.
The Wembley April date. And you can imagine, especially with Matchroom, everything around that AJ Wembley date will sort of fall into place with that. They'll be holding a lot of cards close to the chest and seeing how what happens with that.
That'll be the first pay-per-view of the year, do you think? Think they'll string one before then?
I hope not.
Yeah, so do I. I'm just recovering from December.
Not that it affects me much now, but
I'm sure with you. That's it. You're right. But I saw nice to be back. Just to sum up and enjoyed it. And thanks for people who keep asking when's the podcast coming back.
I know it's actually generally flattering about a few.
I know because we're so.
Shout out to James Walker on Facebook. And it's generally nice to be asked about, and it sparks us and
it does.
gets us into gear a bit.
We go flat over the Christmas period because you're busy with family and stuff, and not much happens in boxing, over that period. But got to be back and see what we can come up with this year. This is the year. This is our year.
This is it.
Big push. But got to be back. So and nice one for us too for making the effort to be face to face on a Friday.
I enjoyed seeing you,
Good.
We'll have to try and do this more.
But cheers, thank you.
Goodbye.